Shirley here with Sirius Talis Moon. This is Jupiter Day, Jupiter Hour. And the Ascendant just crossed Procyon with the midheaven, Ascendant just crossed Spica with the midheaven just crossed Procyon and Jupiter. Now, because the Moon is 22 in Leo, remediating opposition between the Sun and Chiron. When anything is 22 in, is the degree of to kill or be killed. Otherwise, we may have had the Jupiter Zeus election with a strong moon in Leo, but the moon does not touch Jupiter, but the midheaven does, and it's day and hour of Jupiter. But the moon is 22, so don't want to talismanically kill anyone, including self. Moon is squaring Lilith and Sun opposition Chiron and Aries. I want to talk about something, and it's something that it's a discourse that happens in Israel, and I believe it will happen. I believe, first of all, it's true for many Palestinians out there that will not ever dare to talk about that, and to many Ukrainians, Russians, and other people. Now, here's the thing: Chiron is where Andromeda constellation is. And in Israel, we had the returning of the kidnapped people. But even before they returned, I think after they returned, people felt a tiny bit more comfortable to say that. Now, a little bit of a disclaimer: I did not suffer from this problem because they tried to kidnap me, put me in that Nova party, and I'm like, I don't do drugs. I'm not a party person. And it was like, even when I was doing channeling experiment, and I was literally quite tortured, there was nothing that would bring me there. Okay, and and I didn't date anybody, so like like the people that they sent for me to try to date or something like that, they were not exactly the type of people that I would be safe and happy to hang out with. Um, and so that's exactly how I didn't end up in the Nova. A lot of my friends almost ended up in the Nova. Um, I met later a friend that I used to know in university, and she said she was supposed to be there. And basically, when they didn't, then there was kind of like a simulation of a kidnapping during 7th of October, which I didn't sleep for like 7 days. And this is the no-touch torture. It may be the case that Israel helped develop the no-touch torture, for which it should be compensation for literally the entire earth. When I was in high school, they told us that they found a way without torture to get information from people without physical torture or without torture. And it can be the case that they meant they developed the no-touch torture, or they helped contributing to the no-touch torture of MK Often. And for that, Israel should be given full-blown compensation because it's practicing it against civilians, and particularly against civilians that would want peace, that would look to find viable solutions to security issues, and or if they look at, let's say, into philosophy of medicine or the medicines, they look into the actual answers, um, and those are the people that are targeted to horrible rituals. Um, and so that is, and when we have a structure when each person who would be prime minister, left or right, okay, for that record, that means that, let's say, Yitzhak Rabin, that was assassinated, was prime minister in Israel, then in any country, basically, that would mean that he would have to have tapes that show his colleagues in the government raping children, raping women on tape, and in that way he would keep a government. Okay, as we saw, it didn't help. He was still assassin, Um, and so, and he was like not even anywhere near going towards peace in the way that, you know, the peace would be viable without MK Ultra and MK Ultra and similar projects. And yes, those people grow up in those death camps as well. So when you're going to have lists, I know in Netherlands, so Schirtje, Mark, United States, Donald Trump, but also Biden. Biden was the head of the MK Ultra committee. Okay, when I mentioned that to my favorite artist or my favorite musician, he simply blocked me. And I'm like, okay, I'm used to receive this kind of backlash from people when I stand in my truth. It's just like, but now it's kind of like, okay, but why did they block me actually? But am I supposed to be worried? That, and I just said MK Ultra because they were like Biden, vote Biden, and so on. It was like Biden was sitting the head of committee of MK Ultra. Like that's all I said. And it's the truth. There are actually documents, declassified documents that show that. And we understand that the proximity of Donald Trump and Epstein um, is not accidental. Um, but when we see all these names, Biden, Trump, Mark Rutte, Geert Wilders, I don't know, for other, like there are many testimonies, I saw those. We should remember Annika Lucas, Rockefeller, Rothschild, okay? The monarchies in East and West that are associated. The fact that the Muslim Brotherhood is a Muslim Brotherhood of Satan, okay? That any intelligence since Gladio operation at least is running on trafficking people. Elijah's testimony. Okay, the Soviet Union managed to use Elijah as a spy after raping her to seduce some drug lord. The drug lord fell, and the Soviet Union fell as well. It didn't save the Soviet Union from anything. Like you could knock down a drug lord, but you gotta actually not rape people. And um, and so I want to talk about a certain sentiment that is within people, and I want to talk about something that might assist in alleviating the harshness around things. And this is where many people that were hurt by sexual boundary violation, men and women, and PTSD, that was not from Armée, men and women, and even PTSD that was from Armée, felt that, hey, the people that were kidnapped, they receive all the help, they receive all the support, and those and their traumas of the people that were not in that situation are being left unseen, even though they are suffering for decades. Now, first of all, this is a division that I know very well for when the British Empire developed the myth of psychiatry, and this is what's happening in Israel. Okay, Israel is developing a myth of psychiatry. Teva Pharmaceutic launching upon the return of the kidnapped people an ancient, old, it's not even medicine, it's a product that is meant to torture people, to keep them silent. It grew, for many it grew breasts, so, but with those breasts they also grow cancer. It's basically anomalies in cell growth, and some cells we have is cancer. Um, and that is risperidone, risperidal, as the same generic component. And now Teva Pharmaceutics wants to use that to treat people, whether it's schizophrenia or bipolar. Both phenomena are result of trauma. And big shout out to Lars. Like, I just, you know, this is a man who um, has went through ritual rape, um, at age of 8 in 1996 in Paris, and needless to say, I believe him. And that was 1996 during the White March when that true case was discovered. And at the time in Paris, they were raping people while people were marching at the White March. And this is exactly the type of characteristic of the activity that is attack against the light. Yes, it is very possible that those that were in the physical rituals had to be perpetrators. I don't know what for 8 years old child. Um, so and he is like aware of that. It's not even a question. And this is a person that began to heal, recover from drug addiction, because just like when he left the cult, just like when women left the cult, they probably wanted him a junkie on the street that sells basically sex to survive or something like that. And he recovered from having drug addiction through a campaign done against his personal life, whether it's to cause people to separate him so that he wouldn't have support or whatnot. And eventually he was tortured in a mental hospital. We didn't have housing. He was tortured in a mental hospital. And fortunately, several people probably identified that on time. And I mentioned and stressed that the treat of schizophrenia and bipolar or whatnot is housing first and believing the patient. And when we're not doing that, all it would take is for a little bit of torture, somebody would go and threaten the person, and then he would kill that name, police part like the Nile. And we have another political assassination with people seeing the assassin as a hero on the one hand, never knowing about what happened behind the gun, and the psychiatry used against with the people, both the leaders and the people, causing. And risperidone is one of those products that in concoction can make a person go and do a terror attack, because the violence is such that either they manage to kill themselves, but if they were tortured from the outside, they already are aware of the environmental things that didn't stop what happened to them, and then they're more liable to commit, whether it's assassination, terror, and so on and so forth. Lars didn't go that road, and eventually began to heal and speak, and now exposes the DSM-5, and it's so sad for me as a person that at least a decade is tending to the medicines and knows about open dialogue, which was developed in Netherlands. There is no reason for any, now Uranus is going to the 12th house of the 1800 Netherlands chart. There's no reason for Netherlands asylum to be Victorian asylums. There's no need for that. And what is the funding for the public housing? Is the funding of the classified project that target individuals. And they target our leaders too. Okay, our leaders also go through torture, and they have to go through those rituals, which means they have to be raped again, and they have to rape. It's basically they are torturing our leaders to keep them violent. Okay, because and basically and here is where it touches on the people that deal with trauma that is not of, let's say, something like the kidnapped people. So first of all, it's a myth of psychiatry. If those people will be prescribed risperidone, risperidal, they will do a 9/11. In fact, it's a tickling bomb, and even right after 7th of October, the survivors were forcibly hospitalized. They were taking psychedelics, and mind you, anybody that was taking psychedelics there, they were not just using that recreationally. They were people that already had traumas, that were taking psychedelics and partying, because for them to heal the traumas was to use the very same MDMA. Now, MDMA, for example, I don't know about LSD, but MDMA is a drug that, according to Terence McKenna, a person grows less discerning about intimate encounters, actually because it's kind of like a love buffer. But this is a drug that can absolutely be used for traumatized people to juxtapose them with children, and that can create beyond horrid results. And usually do that on camera, and that's how we get people to have those tapes in extortion calls. Um, and it's also done to the juristic system that would deal with that. Um, and so, and there are indeed conscious perpetrators that, they kind of like, they rape children and they are okay with that, which absolutely does not need to be. Even Ehud Barak, that was with Epstein, said, yeah, he slept with a 13-year-old child, and he thinks that's okay. And mind you, particularly cultures like the Mormons, like Islamic cultures that used to marry, 14 years old man marries a young girl, in the secret societies. They say that even they marry young boys. Okay, that those things, those rituals of satanic marriage, of an old person, or the high degree is also to marry a young boy. Um, those things are the things that basically at the root of what we're struggling with, and are the things that are at the root of, going back to the Nova survivors that were forcibly hospitalized in Eitanim, and I was talking about in 7th of October. Eitanim was an asylum that had millennia of litigations against it, like so much so that the patients united in class lawsuit against Eitanim because it was the antithetical of psychiatric. Psychiatric treatment is housing first, believe in the patient, let them rest, okay, so independently of work. The trauma-informed yoga, the things like Annika Lucas talks about, and even the Kundalini rise, or accelerating the Kundalini rise, or feeling all of our emotions and going through it. Not everybody is built for that. Okay, and that is important. I don't know how much. There are other ways that are not always on the line of purging the emotions of the unbearable. Some people do that and it helps them. It's not possible for all people. For me, for example, to bury the emotions of the unbearable, and regardless of the severity of things, that would be a nuclear holocaust. But there are other ways that I can actually feel good emotions without drugs. Essential oils are very involved. Something like cocoa, ylang ylang, that have this good scent, and something like rock rose that dissolves the trauma and transmute that. This is something that is assisting, and I think that even conventional medicine people are surprised at the speed. So it does accelerate the healing, but it doesn't accelerate, it just transmutes the trauma. Again, different people can have different solutions, but what's important to say about that is that forcibly hospitalizing people in a Victorian asylum is not the answer, and that happened to the Nova survivors, and people actually had to go against that. And people that I knew a banker, it was my counter banker, okay, not like a top banker, and she had a family member that probably was ritually abused, and they would hospitalize the family member forcibly, and then the family member naturally would run away from the family, and then she would hang around with people that wouldn't hang around, and then she would get pregnant, and all of those things. So it evoked the questions that people had a hard time dealing with, because they thought that it was okay to hospitalize the Nova survivors and give them psychiatric drugs that are countered with the psychedelic drugs. And everybody knows that that's a crime against humanity by design, but this is exactly how Israel is using the myth of psychiatry just like the British Empire, to create a national identity, because there would be people that would want the supposed therapy that the kidnapped people receive, which I don't think is containing of human rights. I just think that they can't talk about that because very likely they were trafficked to high-profile people while they were in there. Very likely there was okay. And now what's happening is that the people that went through other types of trauma that are about ritual abuse even feel like why they receive all the support and they don't. They receive a bear hug, but it's not a safe bear hug. It's basically people giving them all the wrong treatment and them feeling so uncomfortable to even talk about that. That some of them will try to kill themselves, some of them will try to run, some of them will commit terror attacks. Even through the astral, because their floaters would go and hack the nervous systems. Okay, and if you have an Israeli floater hacking a Palestinian nervous system, you have a terror attack. And look at these Arabs, they're animals, they're this. Very simple. That's the image. But the terror that... And they could do exactly the same thing with a Palestinian floater hacking into an Israeli nervous system. That's the thing. That's the mechanism behind those things. Each and every person have a handler. And there is when we take into account the no-touch torture, and now those people that were sexually abused and so on and so forth, some of them there were attempts to put them in the Nova, and some of them rituals still done on them, and that's to create that division that, hey, those people are receiving help and they would want the type of help that they are receiving, instead of understanding that there are these classified projects that keep them targeted. A lot of what people call flashbacks are triggered by, and on purpose triggered by, the environment, because that was a part of the by design trauma. And this is why, I would talk to psychiatrists and they would tell me in the hospitals, it's a revolving door. And I'm like, when I see a chemist cutting a Seroquel long-release pill that she knows as a chemist that cutting that affects, that it doesn't help when you cut the medicine. And I ask her, why did you do that? And she tells me, I cannot with the side effects. And of course, Seroquel is one of those antipsychotics, which is like risperidone, Risperdal, or Zyprexa, which is given to olanzapine. Okay, each and one of them carries a gazillion of class lawsuits, one class lawsuits. And at the same time, I do want to stress the fact that this sentiment around one's trauma not being recognized and another's trauma being recognized, or one trauma not being anywhere near another trauma. A lot of us MK oftens, we were afraid to speak because it's like, it's a no-touch thing or that. And then there was attempts to kidnap us in the physical. And back in 2007, it was actually rape victims that they told me that sometimes the most difficult thing for them was the psychological abuse. Sometimes, and again, I'm like, no, I'm not here to compare traumas. And it was rape victims that gave the legitimization. But when people use the term soul rape, it's basically spiritual rape that is felt on the body, that's causing the same, whether it's yeast infections, whether it's ailments that are considered autoimmune. Okay, those things. Then people were wishing people to get group raped, and for the people that for the MK ofteners victims, the people that would do these things, that would not believe there were this, they were people that were getting money to target individuals. And it was by design, the targeting, except for, like, I heard some of the people that were violated, sometimes say those things, um, and how should I say that? It is because of the lack of support that they receive by design. Okay, it's that isolation that they receive by design. So everything that you feel is normal. Okay, if you're feeling weird, it's normal because those things are inhumane. And I also want you to know that those traumas that one went through, they were a roadway to try to mind control the person, to put them in those ritual trafficking situations, and that's also important to remember. Um, so I've been dealing with that since at least 2007, on and off, and yeah, there were things that were beyond horrid, beyond horrid. And sometimes because it's in the astral, they don't know if it's a group of people or it's just one person that have a deed that is doing that. They have many personalities is doing that, um, and um, also the understanding that 2025, a lot of the witches, so to speak, are the witches that get money to target people. So warlocks or witches, when those people are going to be burned on the stake, there will be a lot of people that would praise that, because for them it means that the end of torture. Now, of course, very likely they're going to be also burning innocent people and so on. But for the people that are going through these tortures, they're like, well, everything that stopped these tortures, including a global nuclear holocaust. This is how they program people to agree with creating mass death. Um, and in fact, knowing that mass death is on the line is something that creates peace. But the peace will not be peace with negotiations that are basically consolidating peace by performing ritual abuse. And that's also important. But it's not the jealousy in the treatment that other people get, because this is a myth of division that the British Empire used when it had a colony in India, to make the British people want to have psychiatric hospitals like the Indians, and that created a revival of the Victorian hospitalization in Britain. And Israel is doing that right now. Now, Netherlands, what I love about Netherlands, Uranus is going through their 12th house, so it's going to be a civil war and a revolution around the psychiatric question. Stay tuned to Netherlands, folks, because that's going to be perhaps a liberation uh, um, from a lot of the dumbfuckery.